I think part of it is they don't know what to do, right? They don't know what to do. That's part of it. There's not any kind of structure to let them know, hey, do this on your own, right? And I think we've created this robotic training models that they have to show up on some field with 20 other kids to get to train. And there's other things that they can do on their own, right? I tell you what's really exciting that we're starting to see in the game, and we're starting to see the impact of the female athlete as part of the soccer landscape. I'll give you the one example that we've done, and that's where we played. When we went a couple of years ago, there were 3 professional clubs.
Yeah,
the women's game in Greece.
Wow.
When we went back this summer, we were talking to folks, and it was 26.
Wow.
So that's growth incredible. Is just an indication of what's going on in the women's game.
Yeah.
The boys' game is always strong, right? I mean, that's going to be last for, obviously, but the women's game is super exciting for us to see happening.
Well, that's interesting because most of the research that I've done, we get about 2/3 of our players are females. And we think the reason is because guys think they know everything. They can't learn anything from anybody except maybe the world's best. But girls are willing to learn. So it's really interesting that you said that there's a lot of focus on female soccer development all around the world.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. It's going to keep going.
So first of all, tell everybody your full name and with better pronunciation than I will do it, and then your role at Georgia Soccer.
Kostas Hatchikatelis. I'm the technical director in the state of Georgia. Okay. My responsibilities include the ODP program for our state, as well as coach education.
So can you talk a little bit about your goals? What's your vision? Kind of what do you want to accomplish for Georgia Soccer?
Yeah, so I focused it on the ODP side, right? Because of the player development piece and then the discussions that we've been having as well, and why we've brought captain and lead as part of the curriculum as how we go forward in our landscape, right? We don't touch our players very often. The ODP player we meet basically once a month, either on Friday evenings or Sunday evenings, and we try to. We know that there's a lot of emphasis around the club environment and so forth like that. So so what we're doing is trying to manage that time, but be tactical in how we do things, right? Yeah. One of the key things is to have we know that all the top players, they all do extra stuff. Mm-hmm. They all do extra stuff. 90% plus from my rudimentary, checking into the families, they all do something else. And they constantly keep getting asked, well, what is the best? What is a tool for my player to develop? How does my player get to the next level? And I use the term next level a lot because that's really the goal. The goal for ODP is to get players to the next level. Whether if you play on, if you're not on the top team, you want to get to the top team. If you're on the top team, you want to make region team. If you're on region team, you want to make national team. And I get to see players that are being involved at the national level and being able to coach and lead coach the 2010s, 2011s. Those young players, I'm always curious what gets them there.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's great.
Because there's a lot of athletes, but what gets them to that top? Top round?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's fascinating for me because as a researcher and a coach and a player developer, I love that question. How did these elite players, the World Cup players, the professional players, the elite college players, D1, and even down D2, D3, how do they get there? What do they do when they were my child's age? And I asked this question now 12, 13, 14 years ago, because I went to some of the ACC schools and I said, what did your players do when they were 9, 10, 11, 12 years old? Because that's when my daughter started. She started at 10 years old. And I wanted to know, because if you know what people do, if you know what they did and you can follow in their steps, you're going to get as good as you possibly can get. Because you try and follow in the steps of the people that have gone before you. Why recreate the wheel? Why try and do things all over again? Why not just follow people who are become really great at something and then see where that takes you? And that's what we did. So that's actually a really interesting segue to talking about Georgia versus, and I'm not sure if you can do this, but I'd love to get a feel for Georgia is part of the Region 3 group, right?
It's the South region, right? They've been rated the South region, 13 state associations.
I think it's Virginia down to Florida, roughly, right?
Yeah. Down to Florida, up to North Carolina,
Yep.
North Carolina, across Tennessee, all the way down across to Texas, Oklahoma, and the states there. So that's the South region.
It's the region that my daughter played in. She absolutely loved the ODP experience because she did go to Argentina, played against 3 or 4 professional clubs, Boca Juniors, River Plate. It was just such a cool experience for her at the time. So, but
I mean, you're spot on. Part of it, what we want to do with the program is to provide these different experiences, right? Get the players that can get to that next level, and then within that, maximize the experience value. Which, by the way, I need to give some props up to. We have 2 former we have Georgia ODP alum that are in the World Cup. Emily
really?
Sonnet and Kelly O'Hara, right? So Georgia players done good type of stuff. It'd be curious to this discussion, Mike, to ask them, what did you do? It certainly wasn't just showing up at training sessions 2 or 3 times a week. They certainly did a lot on their own.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've got data on it. So I have data on some pro players. We did interview surveyed quite a few players when they were at UNC, UVA, UCLA, and 27 programs, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But before we get there, can you compare Georgia to the top? Maybe Georgia is one of the tops, certainly is one of the top in Region 3, but is there a top state that you always look to? Hey, we want to be as good or better than these guys.
Yeah, when I first came into this role of 4 or 5 years ago, one of the things that I wanted to do was to have us a measuring stick. I wanted us to play against the top teams, right? We do go to North Carolina. North Carolina traditionally a great powerhouse of talent development. Texas, same way to do that. Our top state, I would say, from the numbers that they put in the region team, from the numbers that they send forward, is Florida. I'm not going to blame it on just numbers. I'm going to blame it on quality.
Yeah, because look at Iceland. Iceland, you got the Iceland story in the European soccer. It's a very small program, but can do extraordinary things.
Exactly.
So how would you rate? Let's talk about only things that your players can control. How would you rate your program versus Florida on, say, work rate? And it's just kind of a guesstimate.
Yeah, and from a work rate, I think we're very at a good place, Mike. We're good that we know that. One thing that I tell my staff, and we've got a staff of about 70 coaches in the state, and we tell them we don't really have to coach them up on competitiveness. A lot of these players come to these programs to show, to be identified, and to develop further. We just got to do more. Wish we could do more, but the work rate, I think we're very even with a lot of other states, and I think I could say whether you're in Tennessee or Alabama or South Carolina, just like Florida and North Carolina as well. So I think these players have that fire inside of them. So we're getting the right players with interest to develop further.
And then the second part is this research that my daughter and I did. She interviewed and was a player at UNC for a year. She interviewed 4 really key people that set the foundation for what we did in our player development science of player development. Number 1 was Angela Duckworth, who's the best-selling author of the book called Grit. But for us, it's quality of training. So it's passion. You stick with things, but it's what kind of quality you put into it. So we give points to doing certain things in the training, and those points add up to a percentage of grit. And if you can get the percentage of grit over 100%, it's almost like, I mean, we've never seen it with thousands of players, them not develop the skills if they keep their grit above 100%. We've never seen it. That's the first thing. That's Angela Duckworth. The second person that we worked with was Carol Dweck, and she's on the mindset. She was a best-selling author of the book Mindset. And the third person is Anders Ericsson, who is the king of deliberate practice. And we did a lot of projects with Anders, Cameron and I did a lot of projects with Anders. And his is all around deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is, how do you take what's the best possible way of using 30, 45, 60 minutes to learn the most possible technical skills you can in that period of time? It's called deliberate practice, and we built that into our programs as well. The last person is Anson Dorrance, and Anson is a master at competition. So we use scoreboards, we use competitive fury, competitive fire to get players to compete with themselves with a fury, with a fire, and then to get them to compete with their other teammates as well.
And really, this is where we feel, and I feel, is that Captain Elite is a great model, right? They can take the other pieces that we just don't have enough time to touch on, and they probably don't do enough on their own anyway.
Yeah,
I'm convinced one of the other sayings and works that we have is that better environments create better players. So this is an opportunity where we can put an umbrella of services like a Captain League with these players to get themselves to the next level, right?
You want something you haven't had before. You got to do something you haven't done before, and hopefully your players will get that, and will get more. What I love about this is that they can do it kind of almost anywhere. And that's why I'm so excited about working with you, is your passion, your vision, and you got a gret culture there.
And I tell you, and we get these questions from parents. You know what I mean? My son or my daughter has this fire, right? How do I fuel it? How do I make it? How do I spurn it on? How to create more opportunities for her or him? So we're starting to see more of that, and the parents are starting to look for these answers, especially with parents that haven't gone through the cycle, right? They haven't gone through a family of soccer players and so forth. So it's kind of cool to see that through their eyes. It's really and that's what inspires us, Mike, to do better, right? To find these resources for them, these tools to get to the next level. Because I'm still convinced I still want to be Florida. I still want to be #1 in the South region. I want to send more players to the World Cup and the national teams. I want to be able to fill the rosters of region and national teams through our ODP program and our state players. So it all boats rise for sure the more we do it.
So I also asked Gabby this question. I said, why do you think there aren't more players who are willing to train on their own? And she had an interesting answer. What do you think it is? What is it in your view?
I think part of it is they don't know what to do, right? They don't know what to do. That's part of it. There's not any kind of structure to let them know, hey, do this on your own, right? And I think we've created this robotic training models that they have to show up on some field with 20 other kids to get to train. And there's other things that they can do on their own, right? There's things that we encourage them to do. And then the second piece of it, I think, is and another quote that I have is be comfortable being uncomfortable. Do the things, do things that are, that is going to set you apart. Do things that are stretching for you. Stretch to do. I saw when you came down to the camp, I saw some kids that really struggle with some of those activities that you set up with your trainers. But I tell you what, the other thing is I also saw a bunch of kids that are willing to say, I'm going to keep doing it. I want to keep doing it. And it's cool to see. It's very rewarding.
Yep. So that's interesting. Being comfortable in the uncomfortable. That's Anders Ericsson. He says, if you're too comfortable in your training, you're not getting any better. So you've got to get outside your comfort zone where you fail at least 40% of the time. You don't want to fail 60% of the time constantly because you're kind of not learning from it. But if you're failing 2/3, 1/3 of the time, even up to 50% of the time, you have enough success that'll keep you going. But you have enough failure that it's how you learn faster. You're pushing yourself. And I tell the kids when they're older, I said, you're not going fast enough. You should be almost literally falling over when you are doing these exercises. When you are at that level, you want to be almost falling over. And of course, the best players that they get that and they push it. And they'll fail a lot.
They take risk. They do things unusual in the field, but that's because they understand that they've got to broach that line. Yeah.
And so I'll tell you what Gabby said. She said complacency. What happens is a lot of the people that she's familiar with in her clubs and her youth and even in college, they get to a certain level and they say, I've arrived. Do I really need to do this anymore? But I like yours because it actually appeals to me because I do believe that there is this culture of you got to do it a certain way. You got to go to all these. You got to play more games. And if Anders Ericsson was here, I wish I had him. He had passed away 2020, March of 2020, right after COVID. kicked in, and it's just so sad. But he would say, you don't get better in games. Playing more games is not going to help you get better. You've got to actually master the ball. You got to master the skills to help you get better and learn how to compete more effectively. And so most people don't really think that way. So it's a really interesting way that you are looking at this. So tell me then, what one piece of advice do you have for players wanting to get to the next level? How can they take advantage of what you're trying to accomplish? How can they get to the next level?
Yeah, I'll go back to how can players improve their first touch and increase the speed of play. I'll go back to those two elements that we keep seeing even at the highest level. The difference is, we're very fortunate, Mike, in this country. We've got great resources. We have great athletes with wonderful families that support these athletes. And then so it's sometimes doing things non-conventional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing things beyond the traditional ways because it's always been done that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think uses a program like that we can actually leverage as at least as an ODP membership to get better. And I just want everybody to in order to get to that next level, there's not a ceiling. There's not a ceiling for, like you said, some of those players that, I made it. Well, not really.
Yeah, that's right.
I love your story of your pro player that went to Chicago, right? I mean, what a great story. Here's a young man that, in essence, could have said, "Hey, I made it. I've got my pro contract, right? I'm on the pro team, on the first team. I'm doing that." But then realized, wait a minute, I want to get better. I want to get to that next level. I want to be in the starting 11. I want to be, get more minutes on the pitch. Those are the players that win.